Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today kind of answering some more listener questions. Another one that came from YouTube, and this was in response to my discussion about T3 medication. And this person said, listen, if reverse T3 is high and total T3 and free T3 are low, why isn't it a good idea just to give the person T3 medication to kind of help with their signs and symptoms while you look for the root cause of why the cells aren't converting T4 to T3? And it's a great question. And if you give somebody 5 or 10 micrograms and they feel better and it doesn't create any negative consequences, that's great. It's fine. But usually that's not the case. Somebody gets some T3, they feel a little bit better temporarily, and the assumption is that they're only going to feel good and there's no negative consequences, but there are some negative consequences, and I'll go through these. Keep in mind that the same enzyme that can deactivate T4 to reverse T3 inside the cells is called deiodinase 3. And that is upregulated due to some type of cell stress, cell danger, inflammatory response. That same enzyme deactivates T3 as well. And so one of the reasons why people may temporarily feel good is if deiodinase 3 is deactivating T4, there's less T4 being converted to T3 inside the cell. So it sounds like, hey, if I just give the T3 that the cells aren't making, then I should be good. But remember that deiodinase 3 enzyme can also deactivate the T3 to one of a couple forms of T2, which then may result in the cells and the tissues having to work even harder than they were before to deactivate this hormone that maybe the body didn't want to begin with. So I think it makes sense on paper that, hey, if we just top off the tank, if we just give what the body can't make, it should work. You should feel good. And the analogy I typically use is that if you have kids and you've told them to go clean their room and you go up to the room an hour or two later and it's not clean, you wonder why they didn't do it. We're pretty naive when it comes to the physical body, and we assume that anything that's not going the way we want it to is broken physiology, and I don't think that's the case. I think the cells and tissues work adaptively. If they sense that, hey, there's low danger, then their primary role is manufacturing. If they sense danger, their primary role is cell defense. And there's consequences as a result of that. And it may not feel good to us, and we assume that the body's broken, and this reduced conversion of T4 to T3 or the slowdown in the metabolism is just broken, and we can just fix it with some type of medication. But in many cases, what's going on inside the cells and tissues inside the body is not broken. The body's saying, hey, there's cell stress, there's cell danger. We don't want to increase the metabolism. That could support the threat. We want to downregulate the metabolism and support the defense. And so those signs and symptoms we're experiencing, although uncomfortable, are not really bad things. Yes, the fever doesn't feel good. Inflammation in the body doesn't feel good, but the body's typically not producing them willy-nilly. They're producing them because there's a reason. And so when I look at somebody's reduced conversion of T4 to T3, I look at that many times, is this an adaptive issue, or is this just somebody who has an inability to do it because of some genetic polymorphism? And I think the vast majority of cases, it is an adaptive response, not broken physiology. So saying that, why wouldn't we just give somebody T3 and make them feel good? Well, because it doesn't last. So they take a small dose of T3, maybe 5 micrograms, you feel a little bit better, and then the problem is that benefit starts to taper off. Why does it taper off? Because the same enzymes that were deactivating T4 to reverse T3 are deactivating T3 to T2, and we feel the same signs and symptoms over a period of time. And so, then the person says, well, I felt good temporarily, let me get a stronger dose, and now they're on 10 micrograms. And they're like, okay, I feel a bit better, but it only lasts a short period of time because the body does the same thing. It says, well, there's more T3, we got to deactivate that. And so they start riding this roller coaster of needing stronger and stronger doses. And the challenge becomes not all the cells and tissues regulate thyroid hormone the same in homeostasis or in allostasis. But definitely in allostasis, some of the cells and tissues that are more involved with the defense physiology are going to be upregulated, and the cells and tissues and systems that aren't as important for cell defense are going to be downregulated. So when you start pumping more thyroid hormone, T3, what the cells and tissues weren't making to begin with, maybe as an adaptive response into the system, you could upregulate, make some of those hyperthyroid cell danger response signaling even worse. So you can make those, you can even induce some hyperthyroid symptomatology. The other thing that can happen is if you're taking T4 medication, as you start to put more T3 medication into the system, if there was some production by the gland and you start putting more and more T3s into the system, chasing these really good symptoms, you may suppress TSH. That may shut the gland off altogether, requiring an even greater need for T4 medication. So if somebody does it and you feel fantastic, that's great. If you do add T3 and you feel good temporarily, but then you need a stronger and stronger dose, the reason is probably because there's some type of cell stress, cell danger response, and the person is, you're spending too much time chasing symptoms, maybe creating more problems and not really addressing the real issues. So is there a reason you couldn't just give somebody T3 when they're having reduced T4 to T3 conversion on T4 medication only? There's no reason you couldn't do that. Be aware of some of the consequences. I just kind of said these, but I'll kind of go through it again. If cells didn't want to make thyroid hormone to begin with, if they didn't want to increase the conversion of T4 to T3 to begin with, and now you add the T3 that they didn't want, now they're going to have to work even harder to deactivate T3, and that requires energy that they may not have much of. So you could actually make a combination of more hyperthyroid and hypothyroid type symptoms. Two, not all cells and tissues regulate T4 and T3 the same. So you can cause some cells to become more hyper, especially anything up kind of brain, it's involved with that fight or flight system, and develop symptoms like brain fog, insomnia, heart palpitations. And then three, increasing T3 may cause suppression of TSH and a greater need for more T4 therapy. And the challenge becomes, a lot of times docs won't run total T4 or total T3. They'll run TSH, free T4, and free T3, and assume that that means that there's enough total hormone in the system. And many times as people start ratcheting up their T3 dose, there's a lower and lower level of T4 in the system, and that can often contribute to more symptomatology. So if high reverse T3 and low T3 or free T3 is seen on a lab report, is T3 medication the answer? In many cases, I don't think adding T3 medication is the answer if you're trying to address the root cause issues to begin with. But if you're seeing a physician who's just trying to manipulate blood values, maybe providing T3 and taking that T3 right before the blood draw so that you can see the benefit of it. If you're a person who's just trying to manage symptoms only, take a bunch of T3 and see if you feel better. And to me, it doesn't matter. As long as you feel functionally well, you feel symptomatically well, you feel great, I don't care what you take. But if you're on T4 only, you have high reverse T3 and low total T3 and free T3, and somebody says, hey, we need to give you a bunch of T3 to optimize your thyroid physiology or optimize the blood levels, they're assuming that pumping more T3 into the system is going to optimize the T3, and it may not. And two, it's going to optimize T3 inside the cells and tissues across the body. And remember, if the body's in homeostasis, maybe it does. But if the body is in allostasis, thyroid allostasis, it likely is going to upregulate the sympathetic nervous system, downregulate the parasympathetics, and you'll still have more symptoms.